Today we have Kneecap's manager defending their stance on Palestine. Of course, they got into hot water recently in Coachella when they put up a sign, a crazy sign saying F Israel, free Coachella. And obviously their USA tour got cancelled because of this, guys, and they got a whole bunch of backlash. They actually, got publicized recently saying at a local concert that it was, they talked about freeing Hezbollah and saying up Hezbollah, up Hamas, and all this kind of crazy stuff, which we know they're terrorist organizations, and you don't like to see murder and death on each side, guys, whether it's Israel or Palestine. You hate to see any sort of murder or any sort of, violence take place upon the people. But this one's going to be interesting because News Talk, we know, and RT News actually, both the same publishing company, guys. It's, RT News, News Talk, Joe.e, they're all from the same playbook. So it doesn't really matter. Each one of them, you should see when you see that logo that they're all the exact same. But this one's going to be interesting because RT are normally on the side of Palestine, or at least the government has that agenda. But this one's going to be crazy, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down below. And we're going to react to another video as well after this. But let's see first what the Kneecap manager says, because it's pretty hard to defend a guy or a band talking about how they support a terrorist organization. So let's see his excuse.
Simon Harris welcomed the statement and said so at Cabinet today, but the UK government feels that in relation to the apology to the families of the murdered MPs that it was half-hearted. I suppose more importantly, Katie Amos came out later today, who is the daughter of David Amos, who was one of the men murdered, one of the MPs, saying it was gaslighting and not an apology.
I think the first thing I'd like to say, and I'll address those now, is that the last few days have been very challenging. And to the massive credit of the three lads, and it's something that hasn't been said, at no point have they had any concern for their own income, for their own careers, for their own futures, and at every point they have the absolute conviction that they are doing the right thing and they stand on the right side of history, and that should be said. In terms of this, you said a video emerged. The video didn't emerge. There was a concerted campaign emanating from the US to analyse every single thing that Kneecap have ever said in 7 years of performances. They've gigged to hundreds of thousands of people in about 20 countries, hundreds of gigs. And why this happened, and you mentioned it in the intro, is around what they said at Coachella. And what they said at Coachella was the right thing to say. It's something that we've said.
So, really interesting to say there that it was a concerted effort to analyse everything they've said in the last 7 years and pinpoint certain things that they said that have been wrong. But of course, if you guys analyse anyone's, 7 years, you're obviously going to have said some crazy lunatic stuff. I get that. It's the exact same thing that they've done to Conor McGregor. As soon as he wants to run for presidential campaign, a fallacious assault case from 7 years ago pops up all of a sudden. Same thing they did to Andrew Tate. Okay, as soon as he got really big, took over TikTok, started influencing the youth, and started kind of changing the history of the world, basically, they put a concerted effort into analyzing every single thing he'd done in the last 25 years, and they nailed him on one thing. And they're trying to now basically do that to anyone that arises to and gets any sort of power in this world, because that's what the elites want. They really just want power. So anytime you guys try and rise up, you're probably going to get hit with a assault charge from a woman. My grandma said years ago, hopefully Christopher, you never become famous because you're going to get an assault charge as well. And that's just how it goes, guys. If you get a lot of money as a man, they're just going to nail you. Some woman just wants to get money out of you, honestly. Unless you are a piece of shit, guys. There are people like that. Like Mike Tyson went to jail for 4 years for doing some crazy stuff to women. So, but any sort of civil lawsuit, a lot of the times is, a lot of these claims are fallacious. We don't know. It's very hard to prove. I'm not going to say either way, but that's kind of how it goes, guys. So they did the same thing to multiple people in history. Anytime people try and rise to the top or try and, push back against the elites, whoever the elites are, we don't know. In this case, Kneecap were analyzed for 7 years, and some of their, skeletons came up, let's just say, and they got their USA tour cancelled. But yeah, they pretty much are maybe on the right side of history, whichever way you look at it. I definitely don't support any terrorist organization, but I don't support the bombing of innocent, refugees and stuff, refugee camps. It's absolutely horrendous what's going on in Palestine. So,
to hundreds of thousands of people in about 20 countries, hundreds of gigs. And why this happened, and you mentioned it in the intro, is around what they said at Coachella. And what they said at Coachella was the right thing to say. It's something that we've said at Leeds Reading, at Glastonbury, we've said it in Dublin and Belfast. And what it is a message aimed at governments who are enabling the genocide in Gaza. And what really, really scared the state of Israel and what led to this campaign is the reaction of young people in America, young people who aren't willing to support a genocide and young people who have empathy and sympathy towards the Palestinian people.
And I hear you on that, Danny. Let me come
whenever
back.
there's an uprising of young men in the world, the elites have to shut it down, like McGregor does, like Andrew Tate does, now like Kneecap have done. They have to shut it down because that's how you get powerful, because, you know, young men can basically do anything. They can take over the world if they wanted to, you know, a large group of them. It's very dangerous, quote unquote, you know.
And that, I suppose, if we look at last night's statement, you said, you know, let us be unequivocal in it. We do not and have never supported Hamas or Hezbollah. But, like, it's only last November, Daniel, when one of the band members was clearly heard and can be seen shouting, up Hezbollah, up Hamas. So I suppose that's what the current controversy is about. So even within the context of what you're saying, when is it ever right to say something like that?
Well, we're in the space, I'll address those comments in a second. We're in the space now of moral hysteria and moral outrage. And you have a band being held to a higher moral account than politicians who are ignoring international law. Keir Starmer was an international lawyer. He said that Israel had a right to cut water and food into Gaza. They do not. Children are starving to death, and we're spending 6 or 7 days speaking about Kneecap. We spent less than a day speaking about 50 executed medics. And what I'd say on your point there, it's not about whether somebody supports or condemns any group.
That's true, guys. They spent, you know, less than a day talking about 50 executed people, you know, and the really heavy-handed bombing that's going on in Palestine.
It's not part of the discussion.
But isn't it, in a way? I mean, for somebody, hang on, to say, you know, up Hamas or Hezbollah, you even know many Palestinians feel they're victims of Hamas.
And I suppose what's lost in this, why are the Palestinians where they are today? They're where they are today because there's been a wholesale denial of their rights as human beings on this planet. And to focus in and say to somebody, do you condemn or do you support, is away from the core message. And the core message should be, do you understand? Do you understand why somebody after 77 years of a brutal, violent occupation would resort to violence?
Okay.
But it's a key point here to make is, and it's one that's left aside, the rest of the world are ignoring Palestinians, their human rights. We need to acknowledge that there is an enshrined legal right to resistance.
Okay, Dan, I hear you about that. We discussed that a lot on Prime Time. I suppose tonight we're here discussing the band because it is a critical moment for the band. What I'm saying to you...
Oh, it's a big critical moment for the band because this could end their whole career. You know, presumably they'll never get a USA visa again. If you don't have access to the US market, you know, you're pretty much screwed, lads. You know, but I don't like the way they were saying up terrorist groups because, I mean, I don't honestly think that. I saw a guy arguing with a Jewish guy in Dublin. I don't agree with that at all, guys. You know, this sort of hatred of certain groups of people, you know, that's not good, guys. There's good people in groups and there's bad people in groups. You know what I mean? It's terrible to just label everyone as something, you know, that they're not.
When is it ever right? And I suppose what the UK Home Secretary said, it's dangerous and irresponsible to say these sort of things in the world we live in. We do live in a dangerous world. So is it ever right when you see MPs are murdered, Daniel?
But I'll give you 3 examples and then I'll just lead on to some.
Will you answer that before you give me 3 examples?
I will indeed, but the 3 examples are critical. This moral hysteria, in 2019, 3 different things happened in England. One of them was that the Daily Mail published a headline that said, put Gaza, it said kill Gaza, and a picture of Jeremy Corbyn in a coffin. There was then a video of the SAS in Afghanistan, which is online, using live rounds to fire at Jeremy Corbyn. And furthermore, there was
what's that got to do with the band? I hear you, and I really appreciate you being here. But you're deflecting.
I'm not deflecting
I'm asking you a direct question. And given how popular Kneecap are, isn't there an even greater responsibility that they don't use irresponsible language?
You are entirely buying into where the discussion, where the UK political establishment want the discussion to sit.
I'm not buying in it.
If this manager, Kneecap's manager, thought he was going to come on and have a fair discussion, that's not how the BBC, RTE, that's not how any of these mainstream news networks work, guys. They don't let you get a fair wave. You know, they don't let you get a fair, shout because they have an agenda to push. They have a actual propaganda to push, their own message.
To be honest, I'm a journalist. I watched it. I do think if you're as well known as Kneecap are, would you even say it was wrong to say things like up Hamas and up Hezbollah? And it's wrong to incite violence against MPs.
The statement made that clear, and the idea that was incitement to violence against an MP is ludicrous. It was taken entirely out of context. They're performers as part of a performance. If you were to look at dozens of comedians globally, and you were to take the script of their comedy act and remove six words from a comedy act and then lay it out in a headline and say that this was dangerous, you could do that to dozens of people. This was a concerted campaign.
So yeah, this is basically exactly what Andrew Tate and Conor McGregor said the last few years. and they said that it's going to hit everybody, but nobody has listened. Nobody has listened, and this is literally happening to Kneecap as well. They're just taking certain parts off TikTok, certain little segments, and they're making it their whole thing, which isn't fair either on a Kneecap, you know?
The aim of this campaign is really important. It's not about Kneecap. This has nothing to do with Kneecap or something that Kneecap may or may not have said. And it's solely about deplatforming artists. It's about telling the next young band, both through the music industry and through the political class, that you cannot speak about Palestine.
What about, I suppose, the Eden Festival? I know they did cancel a thing today. Are you worried about Glastonbury, and have you heard anything from Glastonbury?
It's not for us to worry. It's for us to have the strength of conviction that we did the right thing. All of this comes back.
But you don't think it was the right thing to say up on Mass?
It was the right thing to go to Coachella, and all of this has emerged directly from that. You know, and I really wanted to read this, because when you talk about moral hysteria, or we talk about being held to a higher account, a letter was sent to Keir Starmer, who is the Prime Minister, who is a former international human rights lawyer. And a letter was sent to him by a guy called Dr. Mahmood, and it was sent to him last August. When we talk about people being held to account, what this man said was, and he's a surgeon from the NHS, he said that I operated on a 7-year-old who had been shot by one of the...
We had a surgeon in, without, honestly, with respect, I had a surgeon in last week,
so
Morgan McGonigal,
it's so important to not this.
Of course she doesn't let him speak. She doesn't let him speak about the horrors that's going on, right, of war.
Not to shut this down, he said he had been shot by one of the drones that descend immediately after a bombing to pick off those running away.
Yeah, we had that on prime time.
Yeah, but how we can dismiss, and he says further,
that's
most
wild.
Disturbing were children shot in the face deliberately by the IDF.
Nobody's dismissing what's happening in Gaza. So what we're talking about is the behaviour of Kneecap.
And this is the whole thing. This is a total distraction. You have evidence of 30...
The mainstream media will never accept that, guys. They're just with the mainstream line. He's saying it's a distraction. Yeah, I absolutely agree, man. They're just distracting. Like I said, those two famous people that I just mentioned 3 or 4 times, they literally got it, guys. This exact same thing happened to them.
They're saying that Israel is assassinating children. You have children.
Okay.
I have a daughter. They're assassinating kids.
Okay.
And the point of this discussion is that we're going to speak about something that was said in a performance.
Oh, no, gonna have to cut him off there, guys. The mainstream won't like to hear about that. Okay, not at all. An absolute brutal discussion there. Of course, Kneecap's manager is well within his right to defend them, but, you know, it's hard to defend a guy who's defending terrorist groups, guys. It's kind of ridiculous. But, of course, guys, they just did a campaign to, you know, target them like they did to those other people that I talked about. It's ridiculous. So the next video we're going to have is a video that's of mine that's blowing up, talking about kicking old people out of their homes, guys. Okay, you know, old people work their whole lives and then they have their nice little home to pass away in, let's be honest, you know, to raise their kids in, and the government now want to kick them out of their homes to make room for people that, you know, we don't even know where they're coming from or have passports. So absolutely ludicrous stuff. This one is going to be a lady who was bought and paid for by RTE, of course, and she's going to give her opinion on why it was amazing to move out of her home and she should have done so sooner. Listen to this, guys. This is crazy. So I haven't actually watched this one yet, but apparently it's just complete propaganda again, brainwashing.
I chose to downsize because it got to us, and I chose with the view to future-proofing. My house was too big. I'd been in it for 20 years because I'd been in other houses before. The garden was lovely, and I love gardening, but it was going to get too big. So I decided that I would buy a smaller house, but it had to have a certain amount of bedrooms because some of my children live down the country. But it was very important for me, unlike Una, to be in the same place. So there were a few things that were important. One was that I would stay in my own locality. I would then be able to have my old neighbours, and that I would have a set of new neighbours, which I have, because it's a very young estate and they're all kind of young couples with tiny babies, and that's lovely. And I find that kind of invigorating. I also feel that as well as staying in the same place, something that was really important for me was the timing. And I did speak to older friends when I was letting them know that I was leaving, and they said, gosh, you know, I wish I'd done it 10 years ago, because there is a sweet point where you have the energy. I find now that it is an adventure. I love where I live. Well, I love change for a start. And people have said, but you raised your children there. But my children are adults now. They have their own lives.
So yeah, like I said, complete propaganda. Like, they're trying to basically just kick old people out of their homes. So she's saying that, oh, we moved on to a different place. And, you know, a lot of the times, guys, people don't even have money to move on to a different place or move on to a different house. You know, these are obviously rich, wealthy people, South Dublin, a lot of the times, or living out in the countryside. Most people that live out in the countryside have a lot of money as well. And they say, we're moving into the city, we're moving to a smaller place. The garden was too big. You can just hire a gardener. And that's what they do, guys. Like, gardening is not that expensive, okay? Especially if you just have a lawn. It's literally not, man. To get it cut, it's like, what, €200 every few months? Like, it's not that expensive whatsoever, guys. And, you know, to suggest that we should be kicking everyone out their homes just because, I don't even know why, you know, but for no reason whatsoever, you know, just so to make room for other people and, you know, so they can kind of develop the cities better. It's just ridiculous, guys. It's just another plot as well. Again, you know, you hate to see it. They're using former RTE staff members. So this lady is actually a staff member to push the agenda. I mean, come on, guys. How people don't realize this is so insane. It's just beyond me, guys. So she downsized to a large 4-bedroom house in Dublin, okay, as well, for those who don't know. So she must have been living in a mansion, guys. I mean, completely just, you know, not even with reality. But let me know your thoughts, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. If you guys enjoyed those videos as well, make sure to hit the join link, become a member today. If you guys want me to, you know, help push back against the mainstream and support independent media, I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Peace.